All right, guys, welcome, welcome. Talk to me. I got a bunch of things I can go over today. Tell me what is on your mind. What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? What do we want to learn? What are we struggling with? Talk to me.
Well, personally, you know that I'm working on making an offer for my buyer. So that's where my head is at right now.
Okay.
Um, she decided not to put in the offer, not to make an offer on the house that she liked the other day, but we are going to see two tonight. And she really likes them both. And she feels like she is ready to make an offer tonight, as long as everything goes well and she likes the neighborhoods. Um, so that's where I am.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. So, do you feel? Oh, Ashley, before I forget, would you be so kind to put in your goals for this time period?
Oh yeah, I'll do that. I'm actually in the car right now. When I get home, I'll do that.
All right. I just sent the link here. Um,
Okay, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So do you feel like you have a good grip on how that process should go? Should we spend a few minutes on that now?
I do not have a good grip on that. I'm kind of, just going along, getting information as I go. So if you could kind of give me an overview, like the steps, so I have a checklist, I can make sure I'm not missing anything.
Okay, perfect. Let's do that. Okay. Um, there may be some repetitiveness from the other day or the other morning.
That's
Good
okay.
good morning. All right, Ashley. Or I'm sorry, Heather, how are you?
Good, you?
Good, good. All right. It looks like we have a light group today. So what we've had a request to kind of review the buyer process a little bit, just to make sure that you can have an idea of how some of the contracts would look. What when somebody says, "Hey, write an offer for me," what does that even mean? What are we supposed to do? What documents are included and all that? Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to spend a couple minutes going through some of the um, the pieces of the puzzle. Okay. All right. My mind is like exploding with all the things I want to tell you, so I'm going to try to explain this in a very logical way. So the first and most important thing that you could do with a buyer is set appropriate expectations. So I'm going to go back just a tiny bit from where you are, Donna, right now. Okay. Proper expectations, in my opinion, is it's actually pretty simple. It's the needs analysis, right, which is on the buyer intake sheet. Hang on. Okay, it's the needs analysis, which is on the buyer intake sheet. That's going to help you understand what the needs of the buyer are, right? What their challenges are, what they're looking for. It asks you questions about motivation. So why are they looking for what they're looking for? Not just like, and you're asking questions that are deeper than how big of a home do you want, right? So they say 4 bedrooms, and you say, so why do you need 4 bedrooms, right? Is it because you want a guest space? Is it because you want a private office? You want a workout room? You're trying to really understand their lifestyle, not just take their order. Does that make sense? And you're making sure that you understand their motivations. That's critical, because if they start stalling later, you may have to remind them about why they called you in the first place. Okay. So expectations is needs analysis. It is also a review of the market, right? So you're helping them understand, is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? How quickly your home's selling? What some expectations are, right? So I would say stuff like couple things about the market. I'd always start off with the phrase about what it means to work with an agent, right? So there's 2 great parts about working with a buyer's agent. Number 1 is I'm ultimately compensated by the other party, by the seller. So you don't have to pay me for professional service. I'm paid by the owner of whatever home you buy. And with that said, I can be more of a consultant rather than a salesperson. So if we go into home A and you don't like home A, no big deal. Let's go back in the car and let's go find the one you do want. I don't get paid any more if you buy home A versus home B, right? It doesn't matter who the brokerage is that represents them or any of that. Okay. I want you to find the most beautiful home for your exact needs. If we walk into a home and it's too big, too small, whatever, fine. Just tell me. If you're not going to buy it, let's get back in the car. No big deal, right? Now, it also doesn't matter which brokerage is on the sign, right? So if I'm going to represent you in the purchase of this home, regardless of where you find a home, whether it's on a website, driving around, regardless of who the listing agent is, who the listing brokerage is, I can help you with that. So anytime you find a property, I want you to reach out to me and I'll get you all the information you need. And if you ultimately want to schedule a time to see this in person, we'll schedule it right away, okay? I would also kind of test them a little bit with respect to how reasonable they may be, right? So I might ask questions like, tell me a little bit about times that you've really enjoyed working with a real estate agent, right? Tell me about times that you've really not enjoyed working with a real estate agent. Again, same thing with sellers. I'm trying to get an idea for how do I win with this person or how do I lose with this person, right? So for example, let's say, hey, the last realtor I worked with kept calling me during the day. I'm busy. I can't take calls during the day. Then I might say, okay, great. So if I have some important time-sensitive news that I need to share with you during the day, how would you like that to be communicated to you? Do you want it to be texted? Should I reach out to your wife? Should I, send a carrier pigeon? Like, what should I do? Or do you want it to die there on the table because you don't want to take a call? I just want to know. I want to keep you happy, right? So you're asking these questions to figure out how to service them. When they tell you what they don't like, they're telling you what not to do, right? So pay attention, because if you do it, not only is it disrespectful, but it's proof that you weren't even listening, right? So take really good notes about how you can help. Take really good notes about how you can help your prospects, okay? And how you can service the prospects like they want to be serviced. Now, I would also usually say something to the effect of, now the average buyer looks at 6 to 8 homes before they buy one. How do you feel about that? To which they will probably go in one of two directions. They will say, oh my God, thank God you're only going to take me to 8 homes because I ain't got time to go look at 50, right? Which doesn't happen that often, right? Or they're going to say, well, I was hoping to look at 300 homes before I made my decision. At which point you can decide whether you want to take on that new responsibility, right? So I was taught one time that if you show somebody more than 5 properties, then one of two things is happening. Either you don't know the market good enough, and you might be taking them to homes that they're not going to be a match for, or that you know that you are inferior to other options, or you haven't asked enough questions to truly understand why they want the type of home that they're desiring. Does that make sense? So once you get their needs, you put it into the search, and if 400 homes pop up, you got to ask them some more questions. Okay. And so I don't want to show them 15 homes 3 times a week for 6 months. I want them to know that I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to waste anyone's time, and I'm going to bring you to hopefully no more than 10 properties, and you're going to pick one of them. Make sense? And I will tell you, I am not afraid to admit this, although I'm not particularly proud about it. I showed 111 homes to somebody one time, and they bought, thank God. But they did not use me to sell the home. Okay. I showed 77 homes to another guy, never bought, ghosted me, haven't talked to him in years. Okay. And then lied about it. And he closed on a house like 3 days after he fired me. He'd been 2-timing me. Right? Because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Quite frankly, I was wasting his time. Right? So you think your time is valuable? Make sure you're respecting the time of your customers as well. Okay. Now, once we get to the space where you have shown them the properties and they say write an offer. Okay. There's a couple more things I want to talk about before I go there. It's super important, obviously, that the person become pre-approved. Okay. I don't want to just see the letter. When I see the letter, I'm going to call the lender, and I'm going to make sure that that lender knows that we're now a partner, right? So I might get the letter, let's say from one of I might get the letter from a buyer's lender, let's say it's Kathy, and I call Kathy, I say, hey Kathy, we haven't met before. I'm Bill Linkwald, I'm the buyer's agent for Steve Jones, and Steve says that you guys have been working together, and I see that you provided him with a pre-approval letter. I just have a couple quick questions for you. First of all, I want you to know I'm going to be working as hard as I possibly can to help him find the right property and to protect his interest the whole way through. If you need anything from me at any time, I want you to call me. Okay? Any questions you got, I'm gonna work as hard as I possibly can to make this happen. What do you think the lender's thinking when he hears that? He's thinking, oh my gosh, thank goodness, this is gonna be a little easier because I actually have an intelligent agent in the process, right? I actually have somebody that appears to be professional so far, right?
Right.
So then I say, I obviously know I don't need to know all the financial details of this client, but have you pulled, or have you looked at his tax returns, right? Did he just tell you he made $80,000 a year, or do you have proof of that, right? Do you anticipate there being any hiccups in closing this transaction, right? I just want to know now so we can both tackle it. Do you expect there to be any hiccups? No. Okay, wonderful, right? But if he says, oh yeah, he's on a contract with the CDC and the contract ends in 6 weeks and we don't know what's going to happen after that, you're like, okay, I need to know more before I find this guy a property that he ultimately may not be able to afford. So let's do a little homework before we go shopping. Make sense? So then I want to know, have you reviewed the loan, or have you reviewed the, what am I trying to say? The loan worksheet, right? The loan worksheet is going to itemize all the fees, closing costs, etc. And it's going to help him understand what his monthly fee is going to be, monthly expense is going to be. Have you reviewed that with him? Right? What's the down payment this gentleman is seeking? Right? Just double checking everything. So now I, in that conversation, knowing that I've got a great partner and a lender, this guy's going to put 20% down on a conventional loan. He's going to borrow $400,000. He's going to put down 10%, so he can go no higher than 440, right? And we know, and he knows that the payment is $2,600 a month, and everyone's happy, right? So we go shopping. Now I know what the closing costs are. So if I find this guy a property at a time that is inconvenient for the lender, I already know that I can just do some really quick math and adjust what the closing costs may be based on closing date, based on taxes and these kind of things, right? Once you see a loan worksheet, you'll know what I'm talking about. And maybe one day I'll bring one in. Pam, can you send me one from somebody recently, please?
I'll check to see what I have.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That will itemize what are all the costs associated with buying the home and what are all the costs associated with getting a loan to buy the home. Okay. Now, the contract will read, and by the way, just a quick reminder, if you have not reviewed these contracts and read them and you don't feel comfortable explaining them, then we need to speak about this. Okay. No judgment. I don't want another day to go by that you don't feel confident and comfortable working with these documents. Okay. So the primary ones that you should know are exclusive seller listing agreement. I will type them in here. Okay. Exclusive seller listing agreement, buyer's brokerage agreement, although I think that's called exclusive buyer brokerage agreement, purchase and sale, FHA loan exhibit, conventional loan exhibit, seller's disclosure statement, and community association disclosure statement. Those are probably the primary ones. Okay.
And disclosure of marketing services agreement.
Oh yeah. Forgot about that. Disclosure of marketing services agreement.
Which is not a GAR form.
That's right. That is a form that you can find on our Facebook page. Okay, so I want you to read through all those and confirm that you know how to explain them and that you understand how the breakdown of everything. Okay, so what I want to do, at the end of that conversation, I know what the closing costs are. I know what type of loan the guy's getting, what type of down payment he has, and I know for sure that according to this professional partner of mine, this deal should be going through. Okay, at least from a mortgage perspective. Okay, next, we want to put together the offer. The offer is going to be the following: buyer brokerage agreement, okay, purchase and sale, disclosure statement, seller's disclosure almost always, okay. If the community has or if the house is part of an association, it's going to have a community association disclosure, and you're always, and if not, it's not, and always a disclosure of marketing services agreement. You're also going to add whatever type of loan document it is. So if it's a VA loan, it's a VA loan exhibit. FHA loan, FHA loan exhibit, conventional loan exhibit. Okay. That is essentially your offer. So you don't share the buyer brokerage agreement with the other party. When you send off the offer, it is simply the purchase and sale, whatever loan exhibit it is, and the appropriate disclosure statements. Okay. Behind the scenes, you have, because you did the buyer brokerage agreement, there's a couple of disclosure pages that the like disclosure of you know, the mold packet and the lead-based paint packet, and protect yourself when buying a home in an HOA, and protect yourself when buying a home doc, and all that stuff that's listed in that checklist on the back of the buyer brokerage agreement. Okay, that stuff you're just sharing with the buyer. You want to have proof, if you will, that you have shared it. So I always would email that to them. Either I'd save the copy that I sent through DocuSign or Dotloop, or I just send it outside of DocuSign or Dotloop and just put in an email to say, hey, you know, you will be acknowledging receipt of these documents, and here they are. Cool. So now what we want to do is when you get a specific property that the buyer wants to buy, you would then reach out to a couple of people. Now, I always did this just because, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, it was a very quick moving, very hectic marketplace. Okay, so I'd call the lender and I'd say, hey, we got this home, taxes are $4,200 a year, HOA fees is this, and we're going to close on the 15th. Send me a new loan worksheet. Boom. Now it hits my mailbox. I know exactly what the closing costs are. If I didn't have access to that, I would be pretty close with an estimation, but otherwise I'd pretty much know exactly what it was. So I want to have real open lines of communication with the lender. Donna, was it you, Donna, that we were having an issue the other day with a lender that, quote, said, I'll get that to you by the end of the week?
Yeah, that was the pre-approval letter.
Yeah, you're fired. That don't work. That doesn't work. The end of the week, somebody else will be under contract buying this home, and our common client will be wondering who the hell dropped the ball. The end of the week doesn't work. Okay.
Yep.
The end of the week is said by somebody. I'm going to get on a soapbox here for a second. The end of the week is said by somebody who's got their head in the sand. Okay.
So Bill, should we be getting a loan worksheet from the lender? The lender just sent me the figures in an email. He sent me the escrow and the estimated closing costs.
That's essentially the loan worksheet.
Good enough?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what we've got here is so I've made the call to the lender to make sure there's no edits and what the figures might be. There was a time where I'd also be calling the home inspector. Say, hey man, I'm about to go under contract. Can I reserve a spot in 3 days for the inspection? Right, this is when it was hard to get a home inspection in 2 or 3 days. It took a week sometimes. So I'd call my guy and say, hey, reserve that slot for me. I'm about to go under contract, right? So you got to know the marketplace, right? You got to know who all the players are. You got to make, and when the closer the relationships you have with these people, the easier your job becomes, right? There was times where I had my home inspector just every beginning of every week, he'd send me his open slots. Like, I'm putting somebody under contract this week, so I just need to know when you're available. And that's how confident I was that people were going to be buying stuff. Right?
So it's the agent and not the actual buyer who schedules the home inspection?
I guess technically there's no rule for that. I mean, I tended to say, like, here's a couple of home inspectors you could call, and here's my favorite. And
I have always given them a list. I guess when I was started out, I was taught always give a list of at least 3 providers for everything, and they choose. That way it can never come back to you as you told me to use this one. Now, I do list them in my preferred order.
right. And I always said, just let me call. I might be able to I probably get you a better price. Right. So if you'll shave $25 off because I made the call instead of letting my client make the call, then I say, hey, Steve, I was able to get a slightly discounted rate for you. Thanks for letting me make the call. Oh, thanks, Bill. I love you. Right. Plus, if I can be selfish for a second, I wanted to be there when I wanted to be there, and I wanted to revolve around my calendar, not anyone else's, right? I wanted control, because at the end, I wanted to show up and shake hands and kiss babies and make sure there was no problems, right? And if I let the buyer schedule it, it's going to go on their time, right? So I probably did a lot more work than I could have or should have, and I did it because I wanted to control the time that it all happened, because I was super protective of my time, right? Because I literally thought to myself, every time I go visit with somebody, it is a moment that I'm not hanging out with my 2-year-old. So this better be worth it, right? And so I was so strict about that. And 9 times out of 10, probably 99 times out of 100, I was able to schedule things at times that made sense for me so I could get what I wanted and do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. Does that make sense? Okay. That's kind of a smile, Kim. Was that a smile? You're on mute.
I was thinking, yes. I was just thinking about getting a pre-inspection, a pre-home inspection for the new listing that I'm going to put into the system soon.
Nice.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm going to schedule everything because I want to do it on my time. And she's just busy, focused on her new house that they're going to close on in a few days.
Remember, they call you to take stress away from them.
Right.
Projects away from them.
Right.
And your job is to make the problem disappear, right? Or the project to disappear. Hey, I got that for you. Don't worry about the termite guys. Got the problem, right?
Right.
Okay. So then I'm doing my comps, right? I'm sending the comps to the buyer, right? I got pretty organized with my assistant where I'd leave the home and say, all right, here's the one. They want 123 Main Street. I want you to send them the comps this way. I want you to pull it up on my computer screen, have it add the termite thing, the HOA thing. I mean, she'd basically write the offer for me. And so I was able to just quickly scan it. I had already explained all the contracts to the buyer prospect way earlier, way before we had, it was offer time. This is when I was setting proper expectations. Okay, here's what a due diligence period is. Here's what a financing contingency is. Here's what an appraisal contingency is. Here's the appropriate number of days that we're generally going to put in there, right? So when it came time to offer, it was boom, 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 back to the family. Make sense? Because I'd already prepped all the stuff behind the scenes. So Donna, this is a good time for you to do something similar, right? Get it down where you know exactly the contracts that you use most frequently and the stipulations. Like remember I said, was it you I was talking to about the home warranty the other day?
Yes, and I did contact Kelly for that, and she sent me the information.
So like somebody would say, oh, a home warranty. I'd say, let me send you the pamphlet from my favorite home warranty company, along with the recommendations of one of the top salespeople in their organization. Her name is Kelly. If you got any questions about the warranty, call Kelly. That's not, I mean, I'm not going to be the right person to answer those questions. So here's an email. It's got a long list of all the add-ons, recommendations, total price, the whole deal. And I would know like how many HVAC units are in there, and does it have a pool, and does it have a septic system, and all these things. So I'd know how much money that warranty was going to be, and that's the amount of money I asked for in the contract, right? So the big takeaway here is let other people help you do your job, right?
Bill,
Yes, ma'am.
I was helping Brooke kind of go through her stuff the other day, and there were things that her client was doing that were not ideal for her regarding the price on the offer and what they were doing for money down and different things, because they were doing the thing where they could just negotiate later, and they didn't really want to talk about it. So when you're setting up those appropriate expectations, can you say, Mr. Seller, this is a seller's market. So whatever house we find, this is what to do a competitive offer. These are the things that I want to talk about before you actually find your home, regarding like what percentage of money down we might want to do, regarding the closing costs, so that it's not an emotional thing when they find that house. Does that help, or is that something that you only talk about that when you're ready to make the offer?
In my opinion, the more you can talk about things earlier, the better. So I wouldn't necessarily say, there is one thing I forgot to mention earlier that might clear this up. The statistics, I forget what the statistic is right now, but it's
because, and I know like there's no standard, but you could say like right now in this market, we really need to have strong offers. So to have the stronger offer, these are the recommendations I'm going to make no matter what house we find.
I think that's perfect. And with that, you should probably have a piece of evidence that is non-emotional. Evidence is non-emotional.
Right. Because then when we're making the offer, I can say, okay, these are the things we discussed. These are the things that that we recommended. Are you still okay with me using these figures to do this offer, as far as percentage of money down, closing costs, these different things?
Well, percentage of money down is probably not going to be so much something that's negotiated that much. I mean, they either have it or they don't. Like,
plus, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the seller, because the seller's just concerned about what they're getting. So contribution to closing costs would be a concern to the seller, but percentage of money down wouldn't.
If they didn't even want to put 1% down for the...
Okay, you're talking earnest money.
Oh, earnest money.
Yes.
Bill and I were thinking down payment.
No.
Me too. Oh, earnest money. Yeah. Hey, you're going to be responsible for putting down earnest money. Typically, earnest money is a minimum of 1%. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And in this market, if you can do 1.5%, because sometimes they can afford more, but they don't want to do more, and they don't understand they get it back, and so they think they're saving money or not wanting to do something. And like I saw
the money they're risking that they don't necessarily have to risk. So you would say, hey, the average amount is around 1%. What we want to try to do is submit an offer where they're not picking apart 50 different line items.
Right.
So let's just give them about 1%. That's the standard. That's what you should expect and be financially prepared for. Now, I always used to say something like this when it was applicable, and it really still is, that about a third of properties right now in Metro Atlanta are selling at or above list price. Mm-hmm. So Heather, if you're my buyer and we're just getting to know each other, I might say to you, Heather, to help you understand what's really going on with buyers and sellers right now, is I need you to understand that 33% of home buyers are paying list price or more than list price in order to get the property they desire. How do you feel about that? Right? And then you would probably go one direction or the other. Say, I am under no circumstances going to pay more than list price or list price for a property. To which I might say, I need you to understand that there's a very good chance that the home you will desire, you may have to do it. Okay. And on average, 99.3% or whatever the statistic is of home, that's the amount that you can expect to pay of the list price. So if the expectation that you have is the home's going to be listed for $350 and you're going to offer $280 and expect this to work, I'm not going to be able to participate in that. Right. And you just just say it. Like, we're not going to go offer 20% off of homes. That's not fun for me. Right. That's not a win-win. Okay. But if you say, yeah, I get it. I say, so just to make sure I heard that clearly, if I find the perfect place for you, or we find the perfect place together, and you end up having to pay more than list price. I'm not saying overpaying. I'm saying if you may have to pay more than list price to secure it, you're going to be okay with that. Yes, perfect. Moving on. Because the ideal home that they find, it may not be the right price. So you don't want to make any like blanket statements to say, hey, every home you should get X percentage off. So whenever we find a home, we're going to do the analysis to determine whether this is an appropriate price or not. Some homes may be on the market for a day. And if the home's on the market for a day, we're probably going to have to be pretty aggressive. If the home's been on the market for 3 months and they've had 6 price changes, maybe not. So everything is going to be case by case. But what you can know for sure is that I'm going to walk you through those decisions. We're going to talk about the pros, we're going to talk about the cons, we're going to talk about the risks, we're going to talk about how to write a contract that protects you. Do you have any questions? And they're like, thank God I found somebody who's going to protect me and who's listening to me. See what I'm saying? That's when the relationship gets deeper, is deepened. All right. So now we're doing our research, right? I was, I don't want to say I was slack on this, but maybe the outsider might have said I was slack on this. I was never a huge fan of doing like these huge detailed out CMAs. Okay. It's like the Wild West out there. Every piece of evidence can support a price of $225, but if the seller doesn't want to sell for $225, it makes no damn difference. Right? So I'd send them a list and I say, look, here's the other ones you could choose from. Here are the winners, here are the pendings, and here are the solds. I think a fair range for this property is somewhere between 270 and 280. Let's start here. Right? But you're going to get yourself into trouble if you say, well, price per square footage says this home should sell for $277, $345. You're going down a tunnel there that's not going to be fun to get out of.
Well,
right?
And I think price per square foot is an irrelevant number. It does not take into consideration condition at all.
And it doesn't take into condition like exteriors, right? It doesn't take into consider yards. It doesn't take into consideration floor plans, flow, the new knobs the seller just bought.
That your buyer loves.
Yeah, it doesn't take into account wallpaper or any of that stuff, right? So at the end of the day, you got to win. That's all that matters. Okay. And just the fact that there is a transaction that happens proves that there is a difference in opinion of value. This is a dialogue that I would have with clients when I was discussing the multiple offers or discussing an appraisal. Okay. Let's say, Heather, I have a guitar. Okay. And I want to sell my guitar and you want to buy a guitar. Okay. The guitar is on the market for $500 and you say, cool, I'm going to buy it for $500. So when I sell it to you for $500, I'm choosing to have $500 rather than the guitar. So the guitar is actually worth less than $500 to me. Follow that? You're the exact opposite. You're choosing to have the guitar rather than the money. So in your eyes, the guitar is actually worth more than $500. You follow that? You follow that logic? So there's a difference in opinion of value. That's what happens. That's what causes the transaction to happen anyway, right? Now, I'm never going to suggest to a buyer to overpay for a home unless they willingly do so, right? The last 2 homes I bought off market. Did I overpay? More than likely I did. Was I aware that I was overpaying? Yes. And I was perfectly fine.
Bill, when you say you bought them off market, that means they weren't listed yet on the FMLS, like a pocket listing. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. So I had called, like in one of them, I had called the agent who had listed a similar property, and the property was under contract. And I said, I'm looking for something very similar to this. So let me know if anything ever crosses your plate. And like literally like a week later, she called me and she says, I got this one. You want it? I said, yep. I went out there, I looked at it. And I basically said to her, what's it going to take for you not to show this to anyone else? I'm not that good of a negotiator when it comes to buying personal property, right? But the same thing happened the next home I bought, which was my wife's friends with somebody who introduced her to this other girl that she was kind of friends with. And she was moving and we went and looked at the house. We finished the tour. My wife and I gave each other the glance. I said, all right, Don't show this to anyone. What do you want? Right? I'm gonna buy it from you right now. Let's do paperwork. Right? Because I don't want anyone else messing with this. This is my house. Right? So did I overpay? Maybe. It didn't matter. I wasn't overpaying by tens of thousands of dollars. I probably overpaid by $5,000 or $10,000 maybe. But it's like 1 or 2%. I just wanted the house. Right?
But
So
Bill, when you're talking about multiple offers a minute ago, the market is so tight right now because as far as for buyers, because the lady whose house that I am listing for her husband also had a house, which they needed to sell in order to reuse their VA loan. And they already found a house that they liked in Hall County. And I'm thinking, okay, Hall County, you guys are fine. Well, they went out there and there were already 3 people in line and she had fell in love with the house over the weekend. So literally she came back to us last night and was like, and she had to withdraw money from one of her accounts to pay off her husband's house because it was only like $189. So she didn't have any contingencies and go back in there and offer full price plus a little more to be first in line. So she did get the house, but she had to jump through all these hoops because she went out there and fell in love with the house, not thinking that there would be 3 other people that were going to make offers on this house.
The more educated you are about the marketplace and what you desire, the more willing you're going to be able to be to make exceptions like that. Like in a perfect situation, I wanted to sell my home before I bought that home, but it didn't end up working out that way. And if I wanted that home, I had to buy it without selling.
Right.
And I had to make it work. So I had to shuffle things around and make it work, right?
Right.
Well, let me rephrase that. Knowing all that I knew, which was a lot, I made that choice. I could have also chosen the other route, right? But I wouldn't have gotten the home. So I'm saying all that to say, don't give an exact number for the value that this home should sell for, because they may have to pay more than that in order to secure it. Okay, so I just give a little bit of a range. Say, I think ideally we should be in this neighborhood. Now, you're protected because you're gonna have a due diligence period where you can do your additional research, have inspections, all this stuff. You're gonna have a financing contingency where you can make sure that the loan that you're expecting to get can be underwritten without issue. And you're gonna have a third party come in through an appraisal that is gonna verify that their opinion of value is enough for this home to go through, right? And should we ultimately decide to secure the home with a high number and the appraiser comes in and says, hey, that's too much, then we'll have an opportunity to renegotiate. And if it doesn't work out, you can leave the contract, right? I once had a buyer, I probably told you guys this story where multiple offers, like 5 offers, home was just listed. It was a great house for this woman. And it was listed for like 175 or something like that. I think we ended up going to like 190. She like really wanted the home. Okay, we went under contract. We won, right? Appraisal comes in at like 177 or something like that. It was like $16,000 less, whatever that number is. And in the meantime, we had agreed to about a $900 roof repair the seller had. And we went back to the seller and said, hey, we got to lower the price, 16 grand. And they're like, if we don't have to pay for the roof, we'll do it. So now my client's buying the home for $15,100 less than they expected to. They think I'm a freaking hero, right? And I got what I wanted and she got what she wanted, right? And she was more than happy to pay for a $900 roof if she can buy the home for $16,000 less. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, that's the only thing I'm worried about for them because the VA is so strict with their appraisals. I kind of tried to warn them about that, you know.
They're conservative, but they're not going to intentionally wreck a deal.
Okay.
Okay. But if the stats aren't there, then you may be asked to make an argument for why is this the case. And by the way, just because the appraisal doesn't come in high or doesn't come in acceptable, doesn't mean the deal is going to die. It means the price might be reduced, right? Or if it's a couple $1,000s problem and your buyer really wants that home, then we go back to the piggy bank that your client's got and we buy the damn home. All right? Your client's got a secret stash of cash.
Yeah.
So we go
My
back.
mama died and left her a ton
Go
of
back
money.
to mom as well. Let's get this thing closed. Right?
It's
Okay.
true.
So the next thing we want to do is we want to call the listing agent. Okay. Dawn, is all this making sense?
Yes.
Okay. Next thing we want to do is call the listing agent. Hey, just wanted to follow back up with you. We just left the property. My clients got some interest. We're going to be reviewing all the numbers, and we're just going to put the finishing touches on the closing costs. We know exactly what to expect there, and my plan is to send you an offer. It's not we're going to send you a great offer, or we're going to send you an offer, because quite frankly, I don't know whether it's going to be great or not, right? Because we haven't gotten into the details of the comparables yet. Okay. So my plan is to send you an offer. You don't want to say a full price offer or anything like that, just an offer. So should anything change between now and the time you receive the offer, will you please let me know? Right. So now you're also communicating to the other agent that you're professional, you're organized, you take it seriously, etc. Right. Now, then you get back with your buyer. And
I'm going to stop you there for a second, Bill. Didn't you also say that I should ask what's important to the seller?
Oh, yeah. Good. I'm glad you brought that up. I'd say, is there anything in particular that's important to your client? And then I would stop talking. Thank you for bringing that up. And they may say, hey, they've got to close in July. Or, hey, they've got to close in May. Or they really don't want to pay any closing costs. Or they already have a home warranty that they can transfer for free or something like that. Or, that swing set in the back, we're going to take with us. So don't ask for that, or whatever it may be. There's people have some very sentimental things. I remember, oh my gosh, I remember a woman called me one time who had just gone under contract, and she forgot to tell us that the window treatments were not included in the sale. They were like made by a family member that had just passed away, something like that. And I had to call my buyer and say, hey, I know you said you want the window treatments, but the seller doesn't want to sell them anymore. How are you okay with that? She's like, well, I'm not particularly happy, but what are my choices? I called back and said, hey, buyer's really upset. They were expecting those window treatments. Is there anything that you are willing to adjust? Right? And she gave her a couple $100 gift certificate to something. Now everyone's happy again. See what I'm saying? So remember, you're representing your client, right? So is there anything in particular that's important to your client? So now I have this new information that that I can use to craft my offer. Okay. Now I got the offer in place. Meanwhile, I've already spoken to the lender and gotten their updated worksheet, so I know what the closing cost estimate is. We've reviewed the contingency periods. We've kind of added in whatever stipulations we need to add in. The most common ones are reviewing the homeowners association bylaws and rules and regulations, getting a clear termite report, a home warranty. What are some other common ones, Pam? Like getting a disclosure statement if it hasn't been submitted yet, that kind of stuff.
Sorry, I was replying to somebody's email. So what was your question then? I'm sorry.
So HOA docs, termite letter, home warranty, getting a disclosure statement. What are the other common stipulations that we see a lot?
I put one in on every, or I speak, of course, to my seller or my buyer. I put one in that anything not otherwise specified in the contract expires at 7 p.m. on the date of the contract. Because I tell them, none of us want to be up at 11:59 wondering if they're going to sign an amendment to address concerns.
I agree. Did everyone follow that?
No, can you please kind of explain it a little bit more?
Okay. Sure. On all the contracts in Georgia expire at 11:59 p.m. So if your due diligence period is over Saturday, like if Saturday's the end of your due diligence period, it by 11:59 p.m. either, and one of three things has to happen. We have to have a signed agreement, signed by everyone, an agreement of what they're going to be repairing.
To interject for a second, it's just the buyer and seller. It's the agents are not technically part of the contract.
Right. So it has to be signed. Both buyer and seller have to sign what, to agreeing to the repairs, what repairs are going to be done and that they're going to be repaired. The buyer has to accept the home in its current condition, or the buyer needs to terminate.
Right. Or there's an extension.
Yeah. Or there's an extension. True. I've rarely done extensions. Or there's an extension. So if you don't ever hear back from the seller's agent and they haven't sent you over a signed agreement, you're up till 11:59 p.m. seeing if they're going to send that over.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not your buyer is going to terminate.
Right. So you've got like the termination paperwork like ready to send off at the last second if necessary, right? If you don't get what you need from the other party. So what Pam is suggesting is making an edit to the contract, which basically says that on the day that the time period would end, the 7:00 p.m. or whatever time it is the deadline rather than 11:59. That way you can go to sleep.
And you're not all stressed out at 11:59 p.m.
Exactly.
Experience taught me this.
That happened a lot where you would just walk away, or would you try to negotiate that?
Well, I had one situation where the agent was not responding. I got nothing from her. I'm emailing, I'm calling, like all afternoon, way before the time it ended. And I'm sitting there at 11:55 telling my buyer, look, it's up to you. Do you want this condo in its current condition or not? Because if we don't hear back from them, and I have already sent, and I've got the form ready. If you want to cancel it, I'll just send it to you for, signature. I said, let me send it to you for signature. Earlier, I had said, let me send it to you for signature. Then I promise you, I will not send it until you tell me to send it. Right. But I didn't want there to be like any hiccup in him receiving it and signing it and any of that stuff.
Right. And there's so many little nuances that can be at play here. Remember, when you send an amendment or an offer to somebody, they're not required to respond by the time that you requested. They're just going to do whatever they want. Like if you send an amendment to address concerns with the property saying fix this, this, and this, and this, and this, they're actually not obligated to respond to that. Right. And it's your job to leave the contract if you're not satisfied with the way it reads right now. So if, like Pam suggested, if they're waiting until the last minute to deal with it, then they have to make a calculated decision. Am I willing to leave the deal because I'm not getting the home and it's with terms and condition that I'm comfortable with? Because I've also had it happen where I did have to send that termination over and say, look, you haven't responded. Like, this is something that's important to us. We'd still love to buy the home, but for contractual sake, we got to kill this deal. And the next day I finally get a hold of the guy and he's like, are your buyers still interested? I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, well, send everything over again. I'm like, okay, but geez, man, come on. You know what I mean? So remember, we always have to be protecting our client. Now, that they could be doing that from a strategic standpoint. Maybe they kind of want you to leave the deal so they can take a backup offer, right? I mean, there could be a lot of different things. So the more close, again, that you have a relationship with the other agent, the more you can kind of pick up on these little nuances. Like I've gone under contract with listing agents before where they'll tell me after the fact, hey, we just went under contract with a backup offer that's better than yours. So don't expect a whole lot on the inspection. Said, okay. So then I sent them all the stuff that I wanted because they don't have the ability to leave the contract during the due diligence period. The seller doesn't, it's just the buyer's right. So they actually agreed to a couple $100 worth of stuff anyway, and we moved on. We bought the home, right? That's why it's so critical to know those contracts backward and forward, okay? So we're creating our perfect scenario within reason, right? So if all the sales in the neighborhood are 225, don't submit an offer at 180. There's no reason for the seller to accept that. There's no evidence that would support that being realistic. But could you submit an offer for 218? Sure. Ask for some closing costs? Sure. Let's see what they say, right? But don't be crazy, right? You want to be just a hair higher than what would offend them. See what I'm saying? And then when I send over the contract, I might call the agent again and say, all right, I've spent a lot of time reviewing the comparables with my buyer. We're going to be sending over a strong offer. And then they see the offer and it's 218 on a home that should sell for 225. And subconsciously, I've just told him that's a good offer. And he may not know any better. You never know, right? This business is so much about psychology. What you say, how you say it. Were you guys on the call with Diana today? Talking about waking up from a bad dream and like spitting out objection handlers?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what, like we talked about this morning, what are you being intentional about getting better at? The study of language. I mean, Diana is a math and physics major. She's studying physics to learn how to be a better real estate coach. That makes sense? It's crazy. Heather, you smiling? Okay. All right, so now we have, we've submitted our offer, we're going back and forth, and the vast majority of the time, a counter offer is gonna take exception with only a couple things, okay? The primary things that a seller is going to not want to, or is going to want to counter with you on are price, closing cost, closing date, and contingency periods. Usually they're not gonna fight you on a home warranty or, you know, send me a termite letter and that kind of stuff. They're going to fight you on the net and when they get paid, right? So I would always say to the buyer, hey, look, we're going to fill out 50 something blanks and they may come back and want to edit 4 or 5 of them. So that's what you should expect, right? So again,
also note that on the counter offer, you only put something in the boxes that is going to change from the original offer.
That's right.
And if you get another counter offer, the first counter offer, it's like it didn't exist.
That's right.
Because I had a deal where the selling agent didn't understand how to use counter offers. And so he wasn't moving things forward in each counter offer. And it worked to my buyer's advantage that he wasn't.
Yep.
He was ticked when he realized what happened. But, you know, he had told me every time we talked, he's been in the business 20 years. He's been in the business 20 years, you know, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, well, you need to take a contracts class.
I think I remember that file. So again, we're setting proper expectations. We're keeping track of all the back and forth. We're noting everything properly. We go under contract. Second, we go under contract. By the way, there's a buyer checklist and a seller checklist in the Google Drive that Pam and I had used for our businesses for years, okay? Right after we go under contract, we put the, what do you call it on there? The binding agreement date. The following day is day number 1. A lot of people make mistakes about that. The following day is day number 1, okay? And all the time periods run consecutively, or simultaneously, I should say. Typical due diligence time is around 10 days. I'd say 7 to 12 days on average. 10 days is most common. Financing contingency, usually about 21 to 25 days. Ask your lender, make sure that's reasonable. Appraisal contingency, generally 21 to 25 days. Again, ask your lender, make sure that's reasonable. Okay. After the contract goes binding, send it off to the lender, send it off to the attorney so they can begin to do their work. And then I would always send the client a list of all of the deadlines and dates, right? Hey, we got this time period before our due diligence period's up. We need to have the appraisal back by this date. And based on how much time I have, then there's some strategy involved in when you order the appraisal and all this stuff as well.
There's a form in GAR called Reminder of Important Dates.
Exactly.
You can fill out and send to all parties.
Exactly. So the big takeaways here are, number 1, take a look at the list that I put here, and I would print out every single one of those contracts and read them through. and then ask any questions that you have. There's a lot of people in the group, Pam, myself, Kathy, Susan, we're all here to help you, okay? Let's make sure that you feel super comfortable interpreting it, answering questions about it, and explaining it simply, okay? And then we know exactly how to put together an offer, and then we know all we got to do is deal with the financials, study the comps, put it on paper, okay? All right.
All right.
Go be bold.
Good.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Hey,
Right.
Pam, before
Yes.
you hang up, Pam,